are listening to The Common Sense Practical Prepper, sponsored by Duct Tape, the real duct tape. It fixes everything, except bad decisions. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America. From border to border, coast to coast, and all ships at sea, here is your host, Keith.
Hey, all, you're listening to the Common Sense Practical Prepper podcast for August the 4th, 2026. And I have mentioned in recent episodes that I want to take some topics that I've touched on before and go deeper and give them the time that they truly deserve. And tonight is one of those episodes. So today we're talking about a difficult part of preparedness, and it's not something that a company sells you or that a YouTube video will solve for you. Getting your family involved in preparedness when they necessarily don't want to get into preparedness. So over the last 4 years, I've received several comments and several emails about this exact same subject, and some of the comments sound like this. Keith, my wife thinks I'm crazy. Or my husband rolls his eyes every time I talk about bug-out bags. Or my kids just laugh at me and call me a doomsday prepper. So if any of this sounds familiar, you are not alone. And in the interest of full transparency, I'll let you know something that might be a little bit difficult to hear at first, but stick with me on this. The problem usually isn't them, and it's not necessarily about you. So when the average layman hears the word prepper, what image do you think shows up in their mind? For most people, it's not a calm, thoughtful person with a well-organized pantry. It's a guy in camouflage yelling at everybody about the end of the world on some sort of reality show. And that's not your fault, but that's just the reality that perhaps your family is accustomed to seeing. They're not rejecting preparedness, so they're not necessarily rejecting your preparedness. They're just rejecting the version that they've been shown. There's also something deeper going on. Preparedness at its core asks people to accept that bad things can happen to them, and that's very uncomfortable. And most people deal with that discomfort by not thinking about it or pushing away from it. That's not weakness, that's just normal human behavior. Understanding that one thing can change the entire way you approach this conversation. So what doesn't work? So let me save you some time. Lectures do not work. Don't sit your spouse or partner down and explain for 45 minutes why the grid is so fragile. That does not create a partner in preparedness. It creates someone who avoids the topic. So fear-based arguments do not work. Saying what happens when the economy collapses is not a conversation starter, it's a conversation ender. Ultimatums do not work when you're talking about preparedness, and I'm sure ultimatums don't work for pretty much everything else, including preparedness. I'm doing this whether you like it or not. Well, that might be true, but saying that out loud builds resentment, not trust, and it certainly does not build any cooperation. And showing your family members YouTube videos of societal collapse definitely does not work. And while we're on the subject of videos and movies, don't set something up by putting on a movie about earthquakes or aliens. Then your significant other walks in the room and says, "Oh, honey, what are you watching?" "Oh, nothing, just a show about people who are not prepared when the end of the world comes." You're not planting a seed. You're honestly not doing that. You're just confirming the suspicions that they've already had. If guilt and fear were effective motivators, everyone on earth would already be prepared, and we know they are not. So we need a different approach. Let's start with their world. Stop talking about preparedness in your language and start talking about preparedness in their language. For example, what does your spouse or partner already worry about? Do they worry about the kids' safety on a road trip? What happens if the power goes out during a heat wave? Whether you have enough groceries if a storm keeps you home for 3 or 4 days. Those are all preparedness conversations, but you're not using the P word. In this case, the P word is preparedness. Don't say bug-out bag. You could say something like, "I put together a little kit for the car in case we break down. You know that long stretch of road where there's no cell service, and I have included the kids' favorite snacks in this little kit as well." You don't say emergency food supply. You say, "I grabbed a few extra cans of beans, a few extra bags of rice this week so we don't have to run out to the store if the weather gets extra bad. Don't say grid down scenario. Something like, remember when the power went out for 6 or 8 hours last winter? I picked up this little battery lantern so we're not fumbling around in the dark if or when that happens next time. Something small, something practical, something non-threatening. You're not asking for their permission. You're also not giving a TED Talk. You're just solving a small problem that they already recognize as a problem. So let them see it at work. And this is the most powerful tool that you have, and it requires zero arguments or discussion. Let the preparedness prove itself. When the power flickers during that storm and you calmly reach into a drawer and you pull out a flashlight, that's the lesson. When a winter storm is coming and everyone else is fighting over bread and milk at the grocery store and your family is already good to go, that's the lesson. When the car breaks down and you've got water, snacks, a phone charger, and a wool blanket in the trunk, that's the lesson. And do not say, I told you so. Just don't. Be the calm person. Your calm is more persuasive than any argument that you will ever make. And over time, your family won't remember the speech that you gave about preparedness. They'll remember the moment when something went sideways and you were ready. That in itself builds a lot of trust. When it comes to the pacing of preps, think of it as a journey. You did not become prepared overnight. So there was a time when you didn't think about this stuff at all. Then slowly a storm, a news story, a conversation with a friend planted a seed, and it grew slowly. So give your family some of that same grace. Some people come around in weeks, some take months, some take years, and some never do, and that is all okay. You can still prepare your household without full buy-in from every single person under the roof. You can quietly build a 2-week food supply. You can keep a go bag packed and placed in the closet. You can maintain a water reserve. You can do this all without a single argument or discussion. Your job is not to convert anybody over to your way of thinking. Your job is to be ready and make it easy for them to join you when they are ready. Try to include them as best you can. Bring them to an event, not a gun show, not a doomsday expo. Obviously, I'm talking about something like prepper camp or some other homesteading or self-reliance convention or meetup. The number one thing you will hear from first-timers that go to these type of events with their families is, this is not what I expected. Some folks expect bunkers and camos. But what they find, for example, at prepper camp, beekeeping, Dutch oven, herbalists teaching about medicinal plants, food preservation workshop, a family-friendly environment with camping, restaurants, plenty of stuff for the kids to do. Now, is there tactical content? Yes. Home defense, lane navigation, situational awareness? Absolutely. But especially at prepper camp, it's surrounded by homesteading, self-reliance, and community, and that is key. I've spoken about that before. So if your spouse or your kids won't engage with prepper content at home, take them to an event. Sometimes the messenger matters more than the message. And when they see hundreds of other people, thoughtful families, all in the same place, like-minded folks learning the same skills, it reframes the entire conversation. You don't have to convince them anymore. The event does it for you. So a lot of folks ask about children and how to get them involved. So here's what I've learned. Kids mirror energy. If you talk about preparedness with anxiety in your voice, they will feel anxious. If you talk to them the same way you talk about putting on your seatbelt, just something that we do, they'll treat it the same way. Let them participate in ways that feel normal. Let them pack their own snacks in their little go bag. Let them hold the flashlight during a power outage. Let them help you check the batteries in the smoke detectors. Make it feel like responsibility, not fear. The goal is not to make them tiny survivalists. It's to raise kids who don't panic when something unexpected happens. And that's a gift that will serve them their entire lives, whether they call themselves preppers or not. All right, so let's talk about when it causes genuine conflict. Sometimes a topic just doesn't create an eye roll. Sometimes it causes friction in a relationship. If you're spending money on preparedness supplies and your spouse sees every purchase as a waste, that's a problem. And if preparedness has become the thing you think about more than your actual relationship, that's a problem. And if preparedness is costing you your marriage or that relationship, you clearly have lost the thing that you were trying to protect. No amount of stored food matters if your family falls apart. So just be honest with yourself. There's a fine line between being paranoid and being prepared. If your spouse or partner is telling you that you've crossed that line, at least consider the possibility that they might be right. Preparedness should make your life more stable, not more chaotic. So quickly before we wrap this up, if you take one thing away from today's episode, let it be this. The best preparedness plan in the world means nothing if it tears apart the people that you are trying to protect. Lead with patience, lead with calm, lead by example. And the results speak louder than any argument or discussion ever could. So again, one more quick plug about Prepper Camp coming up next week. Obviously, they are sold out. I will be teaching a class on active shooter survival, run, hide, fight. I will be teaching that class at 9 a.m., 0900 hours, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Big Tent, tent number 5, right on the lake, right in the middle. Well, I say middle of the lake, but it's on the south side of the lake in the middle-ish area with all the tents. Teaching a class in the middle of the lake would be fun if we could all just wade out to the tent, but that's not what we're doing. I'm also going to add links in the show notes to the schedule. The schedule on the Prepper Camp website is on an Excel that I think was kind of just cut and pasted on there as a JPEG. I went ahead and pulled everything out, made it a little more legible. It's a little easier to read, kind of expanded everything out. So I will put links in the show notes to those. It's on a Google Drive. If you're coming to Prepper Camp, feel free to print those out so you can have those with you. And like I've said before, please come find me, and I mean that, whether it's between classes, I'm at lunch, walking through the camp area, the vendor area. After class, please come see me. I'm very excited about networking with as many people as I can. And don't forget, there is a giveaway at the end of each one of my classes, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All right, folks, that is going to wrap it up for today's episode. As always, thanks for listening. If this episode hit close to home, please share it with someone, like, subscribe, leave a review. It really does help the podcast gain traction. And here's a bit of a teaser. And if your challenge is not a reluctant spouse or partner, if it's a kid heading off to college 12 hours away and you're wondering how to send them out the door prepared without smothering them, we're going to talk about that one of these days very soon. I also owe everybody episode 12 of Lone Man on the Ridge. I will get that recorded and uploaded in the next 2 or 3 days. All right, folks, if you need to reach out, practicalpreppodcast@gmail.com. And as always, please be careful out there. Take care of one another. And until next time.
You've been listening to The Common Sense Practical Prepper. Subscribe, like, drop a review. Over and out.